Going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. If you don't know who I am, that means you're new. I'm Mark. What's good with y'all? Go check out my other videos. Check them out. Check them out. But first, stay on this one. So, this video, we're going to talk about how often you should be shooting or how often you should be training. I believe I worded the title as shooting frequency. How much is, I believe I worded it as how much is too much and how much is too little. I could be mistaken. I might be paraphrasing a bit there. But in this video, I am going to be including dry fire practicing into, how often you should be training. I do count that as training as well as live fire training. So let's get right into it. So for dry fire practice, and for those of you guys who don't know what dry fire practice is, I've actually done a video solely talking about it. But dry fire practice is a great training method that you can pretty much do at home as long as you have a safe direction to point your firearm in. Of course, you make sure that your firearm is clear. As you guys can see, there is no mag in here, and the chamber is clear. I know it's kind of hard to see with my big dot on there. But how often should you dry fire practice? I do believe that you should be dry fire practicing every single day. Every single day. How often do I do it? I try to do it every single day. Of course, sometimes I get a little busy. And am I saying you should beat yourself up about it if you don't dry fire practice every single day? No, but it is a good idea to do so. Why is that? Just so you can practice your trigger pull, especially if it's a firearm that you plan on using for a self-defense situation. You always want to make sure that you are up to par with your skills and your training. And dry fire is also free. It is the cheapest method that I'm going to say here. Now, I am aware when it comes to live fire training, geez, there we are. Sorry, I am very tired, guys. When it comes to live fire training, I am more than aware that it is a bit cost restrictive dependent on what caliber you train with or what caliber you use for your self-defense firearm or overall what caliber you might just want to be practicing with just because. You know, I am aware that some calibers cost a lot more than others. There's really no denying that. However, though, if it is truly a matter of cost, I would recommend once or twice a week. When you go 50 to 100 rounds. Again, we're looking at it from the aspect of it being cost restrictive. I'm very, very, very well aware. I am much aware that ammo is not cheap. Moving on from that, though, again, I recommend 50 to 100 rounds once or twice a week. Why is that? Well, you get a good amount of trigger practice in, especially with your dry fire practice. 50 to 100 rounds, if used correctly, you can pretty much use it all on practicing specific drills that would be very helpful when it comes to a self-defense situation. And if you're wondering what drills might be helpful for that, I've actually done a video talking about it, so go ahead and check that video out. But back to what I was saying, again, if it is a caliber that, it is a decently expensive caliber, it's not as cheap as, say, 9mm is. For example, we'll take 45 ACP because I got my 45 right here. I get it. 50 to 100 rounds once to twice a week. You know what I mean? If you can, do it a bit more, maybe 150 rounds, whatever. I get it, though, that ammo is not cheap. However, if we're talking your typical, you train with your typical 9mm, I really do think every time you go to the range, you should be shooting probably somewhere around 200 to 250 rounds out of your self-defense gun, whether it be that's your only gun, whether it be that's just your home defense gun, whatever it is. I do think you should at least practice, especially if it's a 9mm. 9mm is, while not being cheap, is not exactly expensive, guys. I do think that you should at least be practicing 3 times a week. I'll say at most, but I definitely would say minimum once a week. Bare minimum once a week. Because again, 9mm is not that expensive. If you are dry fire training, you are doing some live fire training as well, you're being consistent with it, you are going to get very good at shooting and you are going to keep your skills up to par. Now, why does all of this matter? Is because shooting is a perishable skill. A lot of people seem to forget that. Like, I hate to break this to everybody. I'm going to humble myself here for a minute. If I were to not shoot for about 3-4 weeks and then I buy a couple hundred rounds and shoot, I'm going to be absolutely awful. it's going to take a good couple hundred rounds for me to at least kind of get back in my zone. Shooting is a perishable skill. It's not like riding a bike where once you learn, you always remember. And even then, I truthfully don't think that's 100% accurate, but that's just a old phrase that I used to hear when I was a kid. You know, it's like riding a bike. You never forget. That's the phrase. Everybody's heard it. The whole point I'm getting at, though, is shooting. You very much so can forget how to be good at shooting, apparently, because if don't shoot for a month, see how bad you are when you return. Plain and simple. There is no getting around it. Live fire training is 100% a necessity. Dry fire training, 100% a necessity. Now, in regards to how I worded the title, I did ask in there, how much is too much? I really don't believe there is such a thing as too much training. Too much training, that's kind of non-existent in my opinion, whether it's dry fire or live fire. When it comes to dry fire training, I do recommend you do it every single day. If you can, for 15 minutes to 30 minutes a day. You know, just make sure that you are practicing, especially with your self-defense firearm. Dry fire training will get you in the muscle memory of how exactly you need to pull the trigger to keep your sights lined up, so that way you are the most accurate as you can be without having to spend a dime in that aspect when it comes to training. Live fire training. Nothing beats live fire training. Why is that? Because while dry fire training is great, it is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. Live fire training, while costly, is the real deal. This is what you are going to hear, see, feel, and expect in a situation where you might need to protect yourself. Now, with that being said, again, guys, live fire training, depending on what caliber you're using, I am always going to recommend that you minimum once a week, no matter what caliber you're using. Once a week, train, live fire practice. If the caliber that you use for self-defense is a bit more cost restrictive, one could say, then I would more likely than not recommend that you just, 50 to 100 rounds once or twice a week. But again, if you're just training with 9mm, something like that, there is no reason you shouldn't be using 200 to 250 rounds every time you go to the range to do some live fire shooting or some live fire training. There is no excuse, and you should be going bare minimum once a week, if not more. Truth be told, bare minimum means much more in this case if you train with 9mm than any other caliber in this case. But with that being said, I do think that about wraps it up for this video. I just wanted to give some information as to at least my thoughts on how often you should be training, and especially what kind of training we're talking about, whether it's dry fire or live fire practice. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Y'all make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that bell. When you hit that bell, hit all, and whether or not you agree with me about my thoughts on how often you should be training, go ahead and comment your thoughts down below. Make sure to check out all my other videos. Y'all make sure to stay legal, stay safe, stay dangerous. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.